I'm Dolly Wolf. It's my pleasure to welcome you again to the second annual One Day Immersion in TV, Cable, and Digital Entertainment. I'm here with a great team who's helped develop this year's program, including to my right, this is Evan Shapiro, who I know everybody knows. He is president of Pivot TV and Participant TV. He's also my co-chair, and he's going to MC the show today, and I'll introduce him a little bit better in just a moment. To my left is Zanita Henderson from Eris. Zanita is an incredible supporter. Everybody in the industry knows who Zanita is, and I think vice versa. She told me when I first asked her to join this mission was, Dolly, of course, I'm passionate about education. So she's been with me for a long time, and I thank you so much. And then next to Zanita is Mr. Robert Miner. Robert runs his own shop. He is a research genius and has taught me a lot along the way. So Robert is also one of my executive committee members, and I thank him for his insight and candid comments and guidance along the way. So thank you guys very much. I wanted to make a quick mention that something that Zanita brought to the table not too long ago. We are going to be developing a scholarship for next year. We're going to start working on it immediately. So I don't have a lot of details for you, but I do want you to know that it's going to happen. We're going to offer 2 scholarships, one on the creative side, one on the technology side, and it's really kind of geared towards, you know, being in the industry. Yes. And, you know, again, it needs to be developed, obviously, and so does my conversation about it. But I think it's... Stay tuned for more information. But please stay tuned. That's right. I want to introduce Evan, because we want to get the show rolling here. So Evan I've known for a long time. I think we're going into our 10th year of working together on academic initiatives. Just a couple of things about Evan. Grew up in Cherry Hills, New Jersey. He's a Jersey boy. Loves... We're going way back. Huh? I wanted to go way back. He loves his Philly teams. He is an incredible family man. Is passionate about you guys and what you're doing and what he can learn from you. And as I said, he is president of Pivot TV and Participant TV. He, to me, is the king of millennial television, and you got a little taste of that with the sizzle reel. So I want to welcome Evan, as the MC today. He's going to start the show. Evan, thank you for all of your support and what you do for me and the program. Yes, please. And let's get the ball rolling.
Well, thank you, Dolly. Dolly, you know, works on this tirelessly year-round because she believes in opening the door to opportunity for people like you. That's why she does it. You know, you might think otherwise, but she's not getting rich doing this. This is a labor of love for her, and she's been doing this for a long time, whether it's taking speakers to universities around the country or for the last few years doing this program here and then streamed all over the country. So, you know, take a moment today to thank her for putting this together. Who paid to get in today? Right. So you didn't pay to get in. You got this for free. And that's because she believes in making this available to you and pulling speakers like the ones you'll see all day. And these are industry leaders. These are not, you know, the also-rans of the industry. These are people who are the leaders in their fields, the big thinkers in their fields, the people who are changing the industry. So, you know, first of all, a round of applause for Dolly. And then to Zanita and Robert, who again donate their time. These are people who are having very important jobs. They have businesses to run. They have not a lot of time on their calendar to spare, and yet they spend their time helping create this program for you. So thank you to Zanita and Robert, to all the advisory council members, to all the speakers today for giving their time. And the reason we do this is because the industry itself is in a great moment of change. You know, the great, I teach a class at NYU. Anybody from NYU here? That's really kind of sad. Anyone from St. John's here today? Anyone from Pace? Syracuse? Okay, we'll try that again after lunch. We'll see if anybody can compete with Syracuse. Go Orange. Lafayette? Leopards. And that's my Philly representing there. This is a donation of time from your speakers, from your advisory members, and we will get to the program in a second. But you need to take advantage of it. You are here as guests of Dolly Wolf. You are here as guests of this organization, One Day Immersion, and you have been given a gift of knowledge. You're going to see speakers from across every different discipline in television, from the technology aspect to research to HR to production to development. You know, soak this in. Take advantage of it. Ask questions. There are no dumb questions. There is only dumb silence. And if you take the time to reach out and shake someone's hand and ask them a question and offer to take them to coffee, you will be rewarded for that. You took the time to come here today. Now finish the transaction. Make sure that you get as much out of this as we are offering to you. Okay? Okay? All right, so let's jump in. A great example of what happens when you take the time to expand your horizons past the front of your desk is sitting to my right here. His name is Nick Borenstein. I've known him for a number of years. He was a student of mine at NYU. And this is a person who takes advantage of every opportunity that comes anywhere near his eye line. He is a tireless worker. He has worked in many different aspects of the industry, starting with internships at ABC, HBO, NBC, and Comedy Central. He was the 4th employee of my business at Pivot. He then moved up to research analyst there, and most recently he left, which kind of sucks. And he was given a role as manager of TV development at a kind of emerging new production company called Hudson Media. He is incredibly bright and forward-thinking, and he's also one of the kindest people that you're ever going to meet in our industry. So take advantage of him being here later and shake his hand and ask him some questions, because he has just trod the path that you are on, and he can offer some really good advice. So he's going to run a panel here called The Creative Side, How to Plan Now to Get Your Foot in the Door on the creative side of our business. So without further ado, Mr. Nicholas Borenstein.
Thank you, Evan. That was a nice introduction. Thank you. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We've got a really exciting panel here today. As Evan said, my name is Nick Borenstein. I'm a fairly recent grad as well. Holler at NYU to those of you who are NYU in here. I now work in TV development at Hudson Media, as Evan mentioned. I'm actually going to take a page out of Evan's book of promoting, and got to plug House of DVF on E! Sunday, November 2nd, 10 o'clock. House of DVF, E! Sunday, November 2nd. House of DVF. Okay, so we've assembled a really fantastic group of people here today to talk about really the creative side of this industry. From digital, branding, strategy, development, production. You know, we're all interested in entertainment here, and I think it's very important to note that this is a creative industry. And because of that creative side, it's incredibly unique. So I wanted to dive in quickly and announce our panelists today. To my right, we have Gary Hahn, who's Vice President of Marketing and Media at Elvis Presley Enterprises. We have Andy Goldman, who's Vice President of Program Strategy and Planning at HBO and Cinemax. We have Val Boreland, who's EVP, Head of Programming and Production at Revolt TV. And then we have Samantha Bloom, VP of Consumer and Trade Marketing at Oxygen Media. Great panel. So I wanted to just start, before we sort of talk about where we are currently, I'd love for each of you to tell us just where you started and how you got to where you are today. So Gary, why don't you lead us with that?
Sure. I actually started at a couple of ad agencies in LA. I wanted to get into the film business, so I drove to LA right after college, and but it was hard to get into the film business. So I wound up in various ad agencies. But then I decided I wanted to pivot from there. So I went back to grad school. So I went to Newhouse. So shout out to Syracuse. So I went to Newhouse. And one of the reasons I went to Newhouse was because of their semester in New York program. So I did the graduate work at Newhouse, and it led to a internship at Warner Brothers here in New York, which led to a job at Warner Brothers on the marketing side for sort of their pay-per-view, pay TV, and ultimately through that, that led to my next couple of jobs, was at Request Television, which was a pay-per-view network where I met Dolly, and which led to the gentleman who ran that, ran XM Radio. So then I went to XM Radio, and we're in the building now where Sirius XM is, but this was during the XM, before XM merged with Sirius, and ultimately found my way to Elvis Presley Enterprises 18 months ago, which handles Graceland, the attraction, as well as Elvis, the brand, around the world. And so it was this sort of like left turns and right turns, and if you asked me 20 years ago, would I be in Memphis, a Jersey boy, I'd say no, but you got to be open to what the universe tells you to do a little bit. So.
Well, and you said something that I'm sure a lot of people here were wondering. How did you leverage your internship into a job? That's something that I think a lot of us strive to do.
Yeah,
sometimes successfully. Sometimes
there's a lot of luck involved. I mean, first of all, I worked like crazy at my. I mean, I took my internship as seriously as a paid job. I mean, I actually extended. I extended my stay at Syracuse so I could have that internship. I mean, everyone else graduated 4 months before I did, because I had been out in the world already, and I realized how important those internships are, and how once you graduate, they're just very hard to get. So I was actually, I think, the first Newhouse grad student to do the semester in New York, because it was all sort of an undergrad thing. And the rest of my class thought, it's like, you're paying to work here. And I'm like, yeah, I am. And it was a little bit of luck. I mean, the gentleman who was in charge of marketing and PR, I finished the internship. I had a couple of months where I just was searching for a job, and then the gentleman who had the marketing and PR job left, and my old boss from the internship said, do you want to do this? And he said something that really stuck with me too, because I said, well, I don't know if I know how to do this, and he said, just do what everybody does, just fake it till you know how to do it. I mean,
amen to that, everybody.
So it was a little bit of luck, and it was also just impressing people for the 3 months. I mean, I didn't treat it like an internship. I mean, I've had internships that I've, sadly did treat like internships. That I treated like a full-time job, even though I was not making a cent, So, and I think that helped. So,
Andy, what about you? How did you land at HBO?
First off, Syracuse, what are you doing back there? Oh, they
what? All right, well, after this panel, you guys should come up a little bit
Nobody
closer.
puts baby in the corner. Come on. At the break, move down, okay? I went to Syracuse undergrad too, so guys. All right, so how did I start? When I graduated, when I was a senior, I decided I was not going to look for a job. Every summer, I had worked as a lifeguard. I mean, look at me. Can't you tell? I'm a real Adonis here. So I went back to the pool. But I had worked at this pool throughout high school, throughout college, and this gentleman, who I had known for years, probably 10 years at this point, said to me, Andrew, didn't you graduate? And I said, yes. He goes, well, why are you here? And I said, can you spell that? Okay. And he said, well, what would you like to do? I said, well, Sam, frankly, I would like to work in film or television. He goes, get me a resume, get me a resume. Unlike you guys who go to your laptops or wherever and print it up, I had to go to a typesetter and create a resume, which I think because I didn't have internships, I was a lifeguard. I think I had like a 4-inch margin around my resume, and I said, me like entertainment. Maybe grammatically slightly better than that, but I did cobble something together. I gave it to him. A few days later, I get a call from the head of human resources at HBO, and they said, the CEO at the time, Michael Fuchs, was very impressed with your resume. He'd like you to come in for an interview. And this was before the day of pranking and punking and everything like that. So I see Sam the gentleman who got the resume, and I said, Sam, what's up with that? And he said, oh, Mickey, he's my nephew. Now, the lesson here is you don't know who you're going to meet. Up and down the food chain, be consistent, okay? Because you never know who that person is who's going to, you know, change your life. And he did. I went in for an interview. My first job at HBO was working on copy for the HBO program guide. That's when publishing was an industry. Guys, look up that. Google the word publishing. Okay? That's
What's
paper.
that again?
That's words on paper, and you turn the page. So I got that job, and pretty much I've been there, man and boy, 28 years, except for a little stint at Showtime. 1998, I was managing my career, and there was an opportunity for me to move up. A few more shekels, a different title, and I realized, you know, it was back then, it was title inflation. I wasn't as challenged. So, guys, you know, we all have to put food on the table and a roof over our head, but don't get seduced by just money, because frankly, I wasn't challenged, and through the luck of fates, they actually, my old boss left, and they said, hey, would you like to come back, you know? This is also another lesson, don't burn bridges. So I went back to HBO, and I haven't looked back because it's been challenging, it's been stimulating. I love the people, and I love the place. So it's been a really good experience. And luckily, also, like Evan, I was Nick's teacher at HBO. So you better be nice to me today, Nick, because I can retroactively change your grade, sir.
I was worried about that.
Okay, because I'm a little scared, you know, now that we're peers in the industry. Okay. Yeah. So thank you for having me today.
Val, oh, yeah. Val, what about yourself?
Well, I'd first off, everyone's cheering for Syracuse. I can't do that. I went to Michigan. Sorry. In Michigan, I was a communication major and didn't, much like, you know, most people didn't really know what I wanted to do. You know, my entertainment classes seemed interesting, but I really had no direction. And my mother always wanted me to be a doctor. So after graduation, when there was no job and my mother suggested staying in Ann Arbor for another year to do pre-med classes, I said, okay, that's great. And I did pre-med for a year, which was kind of crazy. You know, I thought I could be a doctor, but I was just so done with school after that I'm like, I don't really feel like going through the 8 years it takes to be a doctor. So she was like, okay, get a job. So I got a job, and it happened to be at Lifetime Television as an ad sales assistant, which is a relatively easy job to get because you have a lot of them. They're usually young, they're usually starting out in the business, and there's a lot of turnover. So it was, you know, the right timing. I knew someone who knew someone, kind of thing. Got a job in ad sales at Lifetime, and after about a year, I made the move to programming. And I'm really not quite sure why. I know how, but I'm not quite sure why, because I didn't really understand what programming was, because that's not a course. I think they do a little bit of a better job, certainly at Newhouse and at NYU, especially in teaching that area, but not when I went to school. And I just went for an informational interview with someone in the programming department at Lifetime, which I didn't know at the time was an actual interview because there was a position available. And I was very, very, you talked about lessons learned. Always be on your game, because I was so frivolous about it, and I like was kind of slouching my chair because it's an informational, you know, I have no one to impress, and you know, and he's asking me interview questions, like, you know, and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm on an interview, and I'm like, yes, sir, I am very good with people, yes, I'm very organized, and lucky for me, I got the job, and I you know, grew at Lifetime for a number of years, and after a decade realized it was time to make a switch, so I made the move to Comedy Central, which was fantastic because it had great programming like The Daily Show and South Park and Chappelle's Show. Do you guys remember Chappelle's Show?
Yeah.
Okay, so the week I started, Chappelle left. Remember that? Yes.
So it's your fault.
It's all my fault. I had phone calls of people, like literally I'm a week in, and they're like, what did you do to Dave Chappelle? Like, he's gone. He's in Africa. We can't find him. So that was quite the experience to get thrown into, but I love that kind of stuff where it's just like craziness and trying to figure it all out. So I was at Comedy Central for a while and loving it, still do. And this opportunity for a new network came up called Revolt that Sean Combs was starting. And I will say, when I first heard about it, I was in my office, and you get, the trade news as everyone does, and one of the announcements was Sean Combs is starting a television network. I literally sat in my desk and rolled my eyes. I was like, oh God, what more does this guy want to do? He's got a clothing company, a music label, Ciroc vodka. What does he know about TV? Cut to a year later, I'm in his office interviewing. Yes, sir, I am good with people. I am very organized.
I love you, actually.
Right.
You're great.
You're brilliant. What a great idea. But I did get that job as well. And, that's how I got where I am now. Yeah.
But I meant to mention as well, feel free to tweet during this, since we're all millennials here. Val is at Val Boreland. Maybe say at Val Boreland is the reason why Chappelle left Chappelle Show, or...
Please don't say that.
I'm just joking. And Sam, how about you?
Well, like a lot of the other panelists, when I was a senior in college, I did not know what I wanted to do. I had an idea that working in an office might be interesting. I'd done an internship at a PR agency, so I was thinking PR, marketing, advertising, not really having any clue what the actual jobs in those industries were day to day. But at that time, companies were coming to campus and recruiting. So I was meeting with a lot of companies, and I ended up getting a job at Gray, which is a large advertising agency, doing media planning. I was an English major at a small liberal arts college, and once I got into media planning and realized that I was working with brands, I was working with a very sexy bunch of brands called American Home Products, which included Chapstick, Preparation H, and Centrum Herbal Vitamins.
Can you get me a deal on Preparation H?
And as an English major, I was sitting in front of a spreadsheet all day and crunching numbers, and said very quickly, there's something here, but it's not exactly this. So I started just trying to network a little bit. I was still close enough to college where I thought that those were great connections, and still do think that, to try and mine. So I got in touch with a lot of alums who were in New York from my school, who were in, again, just advertising, marketing, PR, not quite knowing what I wanted to do. And through one of those meetings, I met with a woman who was VP of PR at Court TV. And she told me that they were looking for an assistant, and I said, that sounds great, and I ended up getting that job. So it was a little bit by accident that I ended up in television, and from Court TV, I just stayed in the industry and was doing PR and marketing, and have basically continued. So from Court TV, went on to TV Guide Network, went on to Oxygen, left briefly to go to an agency, but now I'm back there again.
And I think one thing that's so great about all of you is it really seems like you kind of fell into where you are. And I remember when I was looking at jobs as well, I thought I needed to be so specific about what I wanted to do. And I think they're great proof that you never know what's going to happen. And Evan mentioned there's no such thing as a stupid question. And one of the questions I always had was, so we know you're EVP of this, we know you're VP of that, but like, what exactly do you do? What exactly does consumer marketing mean? What does programming and production mean? What is strategy? What is marketing and branding? So I'd love for one of you to just jump in and really explain maybe what a day-to-day is like for you in your department.
I'll jump in. It's hard to say, especially at a startup network, because I wear so many hats. I've never worked so hard in my life, and I work hard. I've worked hard in my life, and this, I specifically for me, I oversee. I always have to think about this: scheduling, acquisitions, development, production, news, and on-air talent. Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah. I don't sleep a lot. It's actually something I asked to take on, because when I was given this opportunity, it was a startup. There were literally only 5. I say literally a lot, so excuse me. I know but literally there were only 8 employees in the company when I started, and they didn't have a head of programming, and essentially they said, we really want you to work here. What do you want to do? You never get that opportunity to create your own job. Rarely do you. And I said, regretfully, I said, I want to run all of programming. And they said, okay. Research. I forgot research. I also oversee research as well. And it's a lot of hats, but it's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to run a network, and I'm literally running a network. So, all those areas, and I won't take too much time so everyone else can speak getting into it, but, it's hiring the talent that you see on air. It's figuring out the strategy of where all the shows should run. It's figuring out what those shows should be and creating them. We have live shows that are on every single day, so it's producing those shows. It is really analyzing the little research we have, because we are a startup and we don't have ratings yet, but there is some research to look at and to figure out and to analyze how we are doing in the social media space, because that we do have a lot of research on. We are a news organization, so it's constantly being on top of what is going on in the music industry and the music culture, in the millennial culture.
And Gary, what about you working for, you, Val, is at a startup network. What about you coming from a legacy brand like Elvis Presley Enterprises? Yeah, I guess every day is different. I mean, I'm in charge. We have a small team, but in charge of public relations, day-to-day marketing for the Graceland attraction, all the digital. I mean, I sort of see our team as sort of digital content creation. So whether it's a blog that we just launched, or we do a weekly podcast, and what we just put out on social platforms every day, it's like, how do we connect the very passionate sort of Elvis fan base around the world, and how do we just, build those connections and keep them going? So, every day is a little different. Some days it'll be a public relations thing that we're dealing. Sometimes it's a good PR thing. Sometimes maybe it's not. But there are weeks when we're planning. We have big events. We have a holiday lighting ceremony. We have Elvis's birthday in January. We have Elvis Week in August, where thousands of people come to Memphis. So my team sort of creates that again. So it's sort of, it's hard to describe the days, because it's just a little bit of everything. We also handle traveling exhibits, and we're going to have some overseas exhibits coming up. So working with people overseas to sort of plan the PR and marketing for that as well. And sometimes it's as simple as writing or redrafting a press release or something as well. So I mean, I sort of ladder it up and ladder it down. I'm not, I don't feel like I'm not too senior to sit there and write a press release. I sometimes enjoy doing that too. So so it's everything from a strategy thing to sort of just the nitty gritty. We're too small a group to say I don't do that. So. Andy?
In the program strategy group, a lot of what we do is sit back, we watch the product, and when I say product, that's all the originals, that's also every movie out there, and remember, we are supporting 15 channels, 8 channels of Cinemax, 7 channels of HBO, as well as our platforms, as well as such as HBO On Demand and HBO Go and Cinemax On Demand and Cinemax Go. So there's a lot. I like to boil it down. It's the art of evaluation, the science of scheduling, using various groups like On Air and program research and everything to kind of like decide how it lives along the lifespan of each individual title. And it really does take a village to kind of put all of this together. Because remember, we are supporting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year across those 15 linear channels as well as various platforms. So we're always looking, we're working with research to predict how the ratings will be. Even though ratings are, we use them, we don't have to sell ads. So it's not like if something underperforms, we have a make good, as they say in the industry. We have to kind of like give free ad space back. But we use that as an evaluative norm to see how well we're doing demographically, who's watching. So we're always just sitting around, we're strategizing, thinking about, okay, what's the competition? And how do we best serve, our programming, particularly our original programming series? And it takes a lot of work, and you sometimes have to, put your ego in check saying, I love this show, even though 99% of the people don't love this show. But you have to treat each...
And vice versa.
That's right. Absolutely. You've been studying us, haven't you? No, it's just it's a constant challenge, and you have to kind of like, keep your ego in check, when you're scheduling. You have to like listen to data, and you have to listen to everybody. You can't be that one voice. You have to really kind of come to consensus sometimes. And it's a fun job. I can't say it any other way. It's constantly challenging, and it's constantly stimulating.
Well, and you just made me think of something too. While this is sort of the creative panel, I do want to go back to the idea that this is a creative business, and that as creative as we all are, and as creative as everyone is in this industry, we're so often supported by analytics and research and metrics and the business side. And even, in my current job doing development at a production company, I'm constantly needing to think of what are networks looking for, looking at that research, looking at that data. So I think everything that you all are speaking to is really interesting to think about when looking for jobs. Sam?
Well, very broadly at Oxygen, I work on positioning all of our original shows for both our consumers to drive tune in and also our advertisers. So on a day-to-day basis, that can mean a lot of very different things. It definitely does take working with a lot of groups in the early stages, working with research to figure out what about a certain show is going to resonate with the audience that we're trying to reach. It's partnering with the creative group on what that is going to look like, what it's going to sound like, and how does that really work with our larger brand personality and behavior, and then it's getting it done. It's a lot of execution, really, on every level. It's making sure that everything is going off without a hitch and also looking good and consistent across the board. I think it's interesting, just in general, to think of myself on a creative panel, because I really do look at what we do. It is marketing in general is interesting because it really is at the intersection of creative and business, because you can't make decisions just driven by what you think might look good or what you like. It's very subjective, and it's something that can pose a challenge internally. But I think that if we're driven by the right information and the right research, which is why partnering with those groups are very important, then you ultimately get to the right end result, and it's what makes it fun.
Well, and that was a perfect segue to my next question. Oxygen, you just recently rebranded and relaunched the network very recently. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Check it out, the Oxygen Network. One thing that the network has done is it's now gone to this tagline of very real. And it's really focusing on a lot of the people here, young, modern, multicultural women. And I'm curious, what were some findings that you saw about the people in this room, about myself, and I also pass it to Val and to those of you who work with millennials. What are some attributes that you've really seen, whether from your team, people who work with you, or just millennials in general?
Mm-hmm. Well, in terms of Oxygen as a generation, as a destination for this audience, one of the things that we had heard when talking to young women was that while they enjoyed watching shows that showed an aspirational way of living, they were also interested in seeing themselves reflected on TV a little bit more, which was a big informing piece of Very Real and of the programming that we're starting to develop a bit more so now. So that was something that was interesting to see in terms of, and hear in terms of what they didn't find on television and where a white space may be for us to try to move into. And then on a broader level, we really learned a lot about the millennial generation in terms of not necessarily having a 5-year plan and being interested in seeing stories reflected on television that weren't necessarily a very linear path to something. They were interested in seeing people who were making different kinds of choices and maybe winging it a little bit and not exactly sure where their next decision was going to lead them. And I think that that's been very freeing as programmers and marketers to be able to kind of take the wheels off a little bit and try a lot of different things.
I definitely wing it a lot. You too? You guys in the audience? Yeah? Okay, cool. Now, Andy, I wanted to ask you a question. There's been a really big headline, particularly in the TV industry, about HBO and an announcement that they're planning to do Over the Top, and been talking about it for a while. I'm curious, for those who are interested in curating content or being a scheduler, what do you see the future of scheduling on TV looking like now that we can now sort of program for ourselves?
Do you also want to explain what Over the Top is? Because I know even people in the industry sometimes don't know what it is. So.
Sure. So HBO is now going to release sort of, how many of you have HBO Go?
Or use your parents. I mean, come on, you're not paying for it.
I'll raise my hand to that.
By the way, my
as well.
kid's not eating tonight because you're not paying for it. Pay for it, please.
Give this man a job, you know? So basically, HBO Go will now be offered to people for a premium. You can basically buy an HBO Go subscription for X amount of dollars without having a full cable package. So you'll be able to watch all of the offerings. You know, my personal favorite, The Comeback, which is coming back pretty soon. But, you know, The Wire, True Blood, Boardwalk Empire, all on an app.
Very simply put, direct to consumer, like a Netflix. You don't have to go through your cable company anymore. I like what you said earlier. Right now, this business is evolving, that even in scheduling, we know that, you know, we pick our, as I like to say, our North Star, which is our starting point. People don't race home anymore to say, oh my God, unless it's, of course, it's a zeitgeist show like Game of Thrones. You know, Sunday at 9 o'clock, you know when it's on. But you also know at 9:01, it's available out there, TV everywhere. You know that you can get it on demand. You can know you can go to HBO Go. You know you can go everywhere. So this is to your point about people being their own programmers. You know, I've said many times, you know, what's the most popular channel out there? And most people will say ABC or NBC or HBO or whatever. No, it's your DVR and your DVR and your DVR. You guys are programming the perfect network time and again. And that's, I think, the great thing about technology now, that there's something for everybody. If you look at this landscape of television right now as the ultimate buffet, you know, you're not going to eat everything, but you are going to find exactly what you want and be tremendously satisfied. And with HBO going over the top right now, I think it's just going to bring more people to the party. And it's great for the industry, as far as I'm concerned.
I will just say to that, though, that one of the interesting things that we're dealing with a lot, and I'm dealing with this as someone who is speaking to advertisers and trying to sell oxygen, but also trying to market my own shows, even with all the change in the industry, the reality is that the way that we measure the audience and how we track who they are and what they're watching, when and where they're watching it, has not really changed all that much. And until that starts to catch up a little bit, I think, you know, we're seeing a lot of innovation happening on the network side, and it hasn't quite caught up yet on the measurement side. So that's something interesting that probably the researchers will speak a little bit about. But you know, like Val said, you know, she started as an ad sales assistant. Those are still where a lot of those jobs are, and that's still how the industry ultimately is running.
Yeah. Val, I wanted to ask you a question. You know, Revolt just hosted a music conference in Miami, and your chairman, Diddy, Sean Combs, what does he go by these days?
Everything.
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 Mr. Combs.
Yes. That is what he would want you to call him.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Combs. He's not here. So one thing that he recently said, which really struck out to me, sort of talking about this authenticity of the millennial, is that success turns you into an asshole. Pardon my language, a-hole. You know, and I think what he was trying to say was this idea of that when you become very successful, you forget your grounding. You forget sort of the road that you paved and the people who helped you, and learning those very instrumental foundations. Do you think this is true? Do you think this is something you've noticed? And all of you are, I'd love to hear your thoughts when you get to a certain level. And how do you stay true to sort of your early foundations?
The answer is there are a lot of a-holes out there. I guess I call him Puff, actually. I do. But I guess what Mr. Combs was saying, that he too can be an asshole at times. But he doesn't forget where he came from, you know? And I think he's also the rare, like, celebrity CEO, you know? He's chairman, actually. He's, you know, not the usual, and he is Puff Daddy sometimes. The Puff Daddy does come out sometimes. But he always remembers where he came from, and he is so connected to the millennial audience and helping them, and he says let the kids run the network. He says that all the time, and I think for him he's not forgetting that he was the kid who wanted to run everything, you know, and he literally started out as an intern, you know, for Andre Harrell, and he worked so hard to get where he is, so he does not forget that. Ever. And I think most people don't. I think you maybe lose sight of it a little bit. How you hold on to it, I don't know. I mean, I think you just have to stay grounded. You do things like this where you're actually speaking, you know, I love to do things like this because I was you at one point, you know, and I think that as long as you remember where you came from and you don't burn bridges, and you remember that as quickly as you rise is as quickly as you can fall, that keeps you grounded. It does. And you know, I think unfortunately millennials have, you know, there's this stigma out there that we feel like you guys, you know, are don't understand, you know, paying your dues, and you know, it's something that I think it's unfair, even though I do think that sometimes of some of them. But I think it's you know, be humble, realize that you are in this position to learn and to work hard, and then the harder you work, the more you'll want to help the next gen. You know, anyone who's graduating this year, you're going to want to help the senior class next year so much, because you're going to realize that it took help for you to get where you are. So I think it's just really remembering the struggle, that as easy or as difficult as that struggle may have been, you all struggle in the beginning of your careers to make it. And as long as you hold on to that and remember where you came from, I think that's the key to maybe staying grounded and not being an a-hole.
An a-hole, yeah. Well, and I was just going to say, you know, hopefully you can all look to these people as mentors at some point in your career. I've been very lucky, both with Andy and with Evan. You know, I was really given a chance to try things out and make mistakes, but also learn a ton. And for that, I'm forever grateful. And I'm curious to all of you, we have a couple minutes left. What is one piece of advice that you would leave with young people who are just about to start their career? And I'll add a spin on it. Let's try to make it under 140 characters. A lot of groans in the audience from that one.
Be fearless, not reckless.
Ooh. Let that sink in.
I would say become indispensable and learn how to write. And don't be annoying in your first gig while you're being indispensable. That's probably more than 140.
That's okay.
I would say work your ass off and be vocal.
Be kind and say yes to everything within reason.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you guys so much, and I really appreciate all your involvement in the panel.